Hello, my name is Julian and welcome. I want to talk today about decluttering, less about the whole mindset of decluttering, although maybe we'll touch on that, but more about how I did it. You see, I'm like probably you if you're watching this video, or maybe you're just curious. I collected an awful lot of rubbish over the years for sentimental reasons, or just because I didn't know I had it anymore, or because I thought maybe I could one day use it again, or I just couldn't be bothered to sell it or to donate it. I want to talk really about how I was able to declutter in a relatively short space of time and relatively painlessly. We've moved from one city to another. We've actually moved between 3 different countries, and we've always moved because of our jobs, either her job or my job. So we've always made career moves. And when you make a career move, in our case, and in a lot of cases, particularly when it becomes international, someone else is paying for your move. So there isn't really an incentive for you to declutter or to get rid of stuff. When someone turns up outside your house with a 40-foot seagoing container to move you from this country to that country, or even just a truck that moves you from this city to this city or this state to this state, someone else is paying for it. So there is no real urgent incentive for you to reduce the amount of clutter that you have. The last move that we did, which was not that long ago, but the last move we did was from one state to another state. And that was for our personal reasons. So it was not driven by any career decision, which meant we had to arrange it and we had to, more importantly, pay for it. So the amount of stuff that we had to move suddenly became very, very critical. So we managed to declutter, we moved successfully, and we moved very little clutter. We got rid of most of it. So how did we do it? Let's start with that. So the deciding point of why we had to declutter had already made sense to us, and we knew we weren't going to spend thousands of dollars extra to relocate ourselves if we hadn't got rid of all this stuff. So we'd already made that decision. But then trying to decide what to get rid of was kind of tough. Now, some things were easy. Okay, the sectional couch from IKEA, nothing wrong with it. We just didn't have a need for it. That was kind of a no-brainer. Okay, but some of the smaller stuff, was it worth trying to sell it? Who would be interested in buying it anyway? We won't get much money for it. And then, well, you never know, you might need it again one day in the future. And that applied to literally bed sets. You know, you can take a bed frame, you can collapse it down, store it in the attic or store it in the basement, and then it's there for decades. So what we did was we selected a space that everything was going to go, that we knew we had to do something with. And for us, we selected one of the bays in our garage. Now, we could have selected the basement, which might have been a lot easier because a lot of this stuff was in the basement already. We could have selected the attic, but that would have meant moving some stuff up there. And of course, furniture is not going to fit into an attic. So then you kind of end up with multiple spaces where this stuff was. So we said, okay, we're going to park that car outside for the next 3 months. And we're going to nominate that garage space as our area of clutter. So once we got that, we then got this sort of mental thing in our heads which said, once something has gone into that space, once we've made the decision that something is going to move out of the house into that space in the garage, it ain't coming back in again. So we then started going through the basement, the attic, although we didn't have so much stuff in the attic, most of it was underneath the house in the basement. We found stuff at the back of kitchen closets, and it is amazing how much stuff you can stash at the back of a kitchen closet and then forget about it and not even notice it's there. So all those old appliances, donut makers, waffle makers, slow cookers, we had 2 slow cookers, fryers, I mean, things that we just were not using. It made no sense to keep them. They came out of the back of all those closets and we started stacking them up in this space in the garage. We took all the other bed sets, everything that wasn't furniture we were still using. So we were still using the office credenza set, the desk and the bookcase behind it. So that didn't go into the garage, but everything else went in there. And that went right down to old photo printers that we didn't have any ink for anymore. We had, what do we have? We had a couple of GoPros. We had a whole bunch of old iPads that I was convinced are worth $20. So it's just not really worth selling, is it? So we had a stack of old iPads, a couple of which were over 10 years old at this point. Laptops, same thing, ancient, never used them anymore. Fish tanks, a lot of fish tanks, some of them quite large. Pumps for aquariums, filters for aquariums, bikes that we no longer used, Kids' bikes that were too small for the kids, but we kept them because you never know. Roof bars, roof boxes, clocks, all of it got put into that space in the garage. And that probably took a full day, like, Sunday, a couple of coffees, breakfast, then we started at it. We were kind of done by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Psychologically, breaking the bond with things happened when we took it out of the closet or out of the room or the shelves or the attic or wherever it was, putting it into that space in the garage. Because by the end of that one day, the rest of the house looked fabulous because all the clutter had gone. You could open kitchen closets and you could see the back of them. You could open drawers and you could see space and wood at the bottom of the drawers. You know where I'm going with this. But once everything was out of the house and into that space in the garage, it actually felt like the decision about whether we wanted to keep something or not had already been made. And then we decided nothing that goes into that space in the garage is ever coming back into this house again. So I would say it probably took a day, and maybe there were a few bits and pieces that came after that, and maybe we got a bit more excited, and a few days later we said, oh, well, actually we can get rid of this as well, and then let's put it in that area. So we ended up with a lot of stuff, and that garage space was pretty full. Now, the difficult piece is deciding what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of. And I would say, honestly, it developed over time. We didn't write a bunch of rules and say, right, this is how we're going to do it. It kind of developed over time. But we realized once we took something out of its comfortable spot in our home, the back of a closet, inside a drawer, on some bookshelves, in a box in the basement, maybe in the attic, once we'd taken it from that comfortable hidden spot and put it in a pile in the garage, we kind of lost all the attraction to it and we lost the link with it. So if there's anything that was sentimental, or I thought, I really want to keep this because you never know, once it was in the garage, that feeling went away. And that was important because anytime I've tried to declutter before and I've said, right, okay, we'll get rid of that because that's in that room, I'll do something with it and I'll get rid of it, it just didn't happen. I mean, it did occasionally, but generally it didn't happen. So having determined what was going to leave, having built this huge pile in our garage, we then decided there would be 3 routes. Well, technically 4, but let's stick with 3 routes or methods to get rid of all this stuff. Okay, one of them was to donate things. So anything that we thought didn't really have any material value for us, but would have a material value for somebody else, we packaged all that up. We took it to the donation center. They took it from us gratefully, and we felt good about that. And so that solved a percentage of everything that we had. And we did that quite early on. Everything else then was split into 2 groups, either things that were small and could be mailed out, and things that were large and probably could not be mailed out without some extreme difficulty or was a piece of furniture. The things that were going to be mailed out had to fit in a USPS priority mail box, and I'll tell you why shortly. But anything that was in that pile went through eBay. Everything else went through either Craigslist or later Facebook Marketplace. So I'm going to start first with the small things, and I'm going to get into a bit of detail here about how actually we sold things in these different methods, because I think that's important to know so that it can help you with what you decide to do. So I've eBayed things over the years. I've bought things on eBay, but I actually get a lot more of a buzz out of selling things on eBay because I enjoy watching the auction close and seeing how much money comes from that auction. So over the years, I've sold stuff on eBay on a fairly irregular ad hoc basis. And it's always been stuff that I already had and I wanted to get rid of. I was upgrading a camera or upgrading a lens. So I knew how to eBay and I had experience of it. But when it came to this pile of stuff that we had, it was a big list. There was like 30 something items of eBayable material that was going to be able to go. And I wasn't prepared to do all of that in one go. So firstly, it had to be easy to package up. And you can package up some really big things. I've bought some big things on eBay and people get very imaginative with the packing methods. For me, it was if it fits in a USPS priority mail box, which can be basically up to about this sort of size-ish, you can look it up, then I would eBay it. If it didn't fit in that size box, it would go down one of the other routes instead. So how did I eBay stuff? Everything, with a couple of exceptions, went on auctions. They didn't go on Buy It Now. They went on auctions that were 7 days long, and they all started at 99 cents. They all started also on a Sunday late evening Eastern time, so that it would be Sunday evening Eastern right across to Pacific time across the whole of the continental US. Now, there's a number of reasons for doing these things, so let's just break this down. Firstly, statistically, most people are looking at eBay on a Sunday evening here in the US. And that's by starting a 7-day auction on a Sunday evening, people are going to see it when you place your auction. And also then when your auction finishes 7 days later, it's going to be finishing on a Sunday evening because it's a 7-day auction. So the likelihood of more people looking to buy what you're trying to sell is increased by listing things on a Sunday evening. So that's the first thing. Secondly, 99 cents. This can be a bit heart-stopping, but in general, for me, it's worked out very, very well. So you go do a bit of research. Okay, so what I was doing, I would go on eBay and I would do a search for the item I was trying to sell. Let's say it was a GoPro Hero 7. Okay, just for an example, because I sold that quite recently. So I will go onto eBay and I will do a search for GoPro Hero 7. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, I will scroll down and look for the tick box that says sold items. Tick that box and then start to look at the auctions. That will then tell me, firstly, what sort of price people are getting for a GoPro Hero 7. And it was whatever it was. It was like $150 at the time that I was doing this. You can also look there and see the standard of photography and the sorts of things people are putting in the description, the sorts of accessories they're including. When you're talking about something like a GoPro camera, unless there's something really wrong with it or you've done a really bad job at your auction, your description or your photography, it's going to sell. All you really want to do is get as many people as possible to look at it, to add it to their watch list, and then to bid on it. And that's why you start the auction at 99 cents. Because if you put something on a Sunday evening, something that you know is going to sell, like a GoPro Hero 7, and you put that on at 99 cents, a lot of people are going to see it. And if you've got good photography, and we'll talk about photography in a minute, and you've got a good, clear description, and the description is honest about the condition of the item, people are going to add it to their watch list. And because it's at 99 cents, they're more likely to bid on it as well, because you never know, right? You might get a GoPro Hero 7 for $2, $5, 99 cents. You don't know. You've really got nothing to lose by putting a bid on it. Because people put a bid on it, eBay will then keep notifying them of other bidders, which means you don't have to do anything. You created a communication tool for your auction item to be able to be shown and then multiple times to people, because 20 people bid on it in the first 24 hours of your auction because they all thought they might get a bargain on this GoPro Hero 7. So immediately as you go through that week, you've got a much higher chance of getting a higher end price for that item and being pretty sure it's going to sell. This has worked for me for years. It does create some heart-stopping moments, if I'm clear, if I'm honest. Every so often you'll put something on, not a GoPro, I forget what this happened to me on recently, but I did it fairly recently and I was a bit concerned. Come Wednesday, so I put the auction on Sunday, 99 cents. Come Wednesday, it was like $1.50, something like that. And it had lots of watchers, but no one was bidding on this item. And I was expecting to get about $250 for this particular thing. I think it was a camera lens. I think it was a Canon camera lens I wasn't using anymore. So I was getting a bit nervous about it come Wednesday. Now, it's not really a good idea to cancel an auction. And because there were some bids on it, I couldn't make any amendments to the auction either. And even if I wanted to, that's not really good form. So I decided to let the auction run. And lo and behold, of course, Thursday, Friday, people start putting some bigger bids on. And before you know it, it was up to $260, $265, I think it sold for in the end. So I was happy with the price that I got, and I had an awful lot of bids. So I sold the item. When you're doing a listing on eBay, make sure your photographs are clear, in focus, and properly exposed. You just need to use your cell phone and put them down somewhere with natural light coming from a window. That's all you need to do. Photograph it clearly and photograph it from all sides, or at least most obvious sides. Because if you're buying something, if you're good at this, you really want to be looking at as many angles as possible for scratches, damage, chips, paintwork issues, you name it. Okay, but if you clearly photograph every single angle of this item, it's very difficult then for someone to have any doubts about the condition of it. If there is a serial number on the outside, I will always photograph that serial number. That'll be one of the photographs, and actually I'll put the serial number in the description too. So firstly, photograph it from every angle. If you look, when you're doing that research of all the different auctions that you were seeing that are the same as the item you're trying to sell, there's always going to be some in there that have got really blurry photographs or they're dark. Now, these days, you kind of got to really try to underexpose a photograph or make it blurry. So when I see a poorly lit set of photographs from item, I'm actually suspicious that there's a reason why it's like that. It's not just lack of photography capability, it's more likely concealing something. And I don't think I'm the only one looking at it that way, because if you then look at those auctions, the ones that have sold, ones that have got blurry photographs or dark or dimly lit photographs or just one photograph of the front of the item, they generally don't get as many bids and they generally don't sell for such a high price as items that are clearly photographed and with a good description. And a good description means list what's included, very clearly what's included. If there is a serial number, include the serial number in the item listing as well, and state the condition of it and be open and honest about that description. Because if something's got scratches and scuffs and you say mint condition, hardly used, when that gets to that person, they're probably going to complain. They might not, but they're probably going to complain, which means you could effectively get anything up to an eBay strike or maybe just a bad review, but you're not going to have a good reputation if you continue to do that. So I have always listed my auctions with, this has got a scratch here, and I might show a photograph of that scratch, or this has got signs of use and scuffs in the case of the Hero 7. List the condition of it. When it comes to returns, I never put a returns policy in eBay, but if anyone ever complains, the first thing I do is offer them a full refund to have it returned back to me, and then I will refund them in full, including the return shipping. I have done it so rarely that, in my view, that is a really good way of having good, solid customer service. No one can argue with it. And if it costs me a bit of money on that one item, sometimes people will have will try and scam you. But in most cases, in my experience, it's probably that I did something wrong. So I think I've had 2 auctions out of 200 where I've actually said, okay, send it back, and they've sent it back to me. The reason I say put everything, only eBay stuff that fits in a USPS box, is because that makes it very, very easy to ship. And I actually ship everything with USPS Priority Mail because it's all tracked, and up to a certain value it's insured, and you can add additional insurance to that as well, which I always do up to the value of the listing so that I'm covered if there is any problem with the shipping. But to me, that's just a very clear and easy way to do it. And it's very, very rare that I've had someone say, I'm not paying that shipping cost for USPS Priority Mail. Usually people just accept it and pay it. So it's just a pass-through cost for me. But it also makes everything much easier. The packaging is free because you can get the packaging for free from USPS, and it's tracked and insured. So anyway, if what you're selling on eBay is a little bit more unusual, the 99-cent thing doesn't work. If you've got something that's only likely to get 1 or 2 bids, or maybe no bids at all, the last thing you want to be doing is putting it on a 99 cents, because you may get 99 cents for it. I had it was a small rig camera cage for a Sony camera that had long gone. And this cage was maybe $50, something like that. And if I put it on 99 cents, I'd have probably sold it for 99 cents. So I actually put it on for $20 because I figured if somebody wants to buy it for $20, then they can have it. And if somebody doesn't want to pay $20 for it, well, then it just won't sell. And it didn't sell for a couple of weeks. Then the third week it went, and I think I got 22 for it. So 2 people actually bid on it, and I got something I wanted. So really, this comes back to that research at the beginning. Look at the sold listings, determine then whether the item that you're trying to sell is actually something that sells frequently or not, and then take it from there. Okay. For anything larger than a USPS Priority Mail box, that went on Craigslist. Well, it started on Craigslist, and then later on it moved over to Facebook Marketplace. And I'm going to talk through the pros and cons of both of those systems, because you may be looking at one or the other, and you may have a preference of your own. So let me start with Craigslist. Craigslist is how we sold 2 photo printers, a refrigerator, a couple of vacuum cleaners, a big metal shelving system that was in the garage, a roof box, some Thule roof bars for a car that We hadn't actually had that car for years and years, and the bars were obsolete. But anyway, we sold those. What else? That microwave that I said that we kept for a decade or so, just in case, that went through Craigslist. And a couple of fish tanks, big fish tanks, they went through Craigslist too. Oh, and a surfboard. Yeah. Craigslist has a reputation, and in the different countries that Craigslist operates, that reputation can be different. So where we were, it was suitable to do the sort of selling that we were doing, and it wasn't going to cost us anything. So really we had nothing to lose. So in terms of how we listed things, we kind of list them very similar to eBay. We would take a photograph of something from multiple angles. So if it was a bike or a lawnmower or a grill, then we put it on the back patio and we'd photograph it from different angles. And we would then list those photographs and then put a very clear description about what the item was, what the condition was in our view, what was included and what was not included. There was an option then in Craigslist to not reveal your email address. Anyone who was interested in your item, they would send an email. They would click a link on the listing site, and that would route an email through the servers for Craigslist, I guess, and then it would come to your email. And when you replied, it would go back through the same route. So you were a little bit protected from anybody who might be looking to do you harm by just reaching out to you on email. So that brings me on to the concerns and the issues that we suspected could happen with Craigslist. Craigslist is completely anonymous. There are no profiles, there are no ratings. So as a buyer, you can't look at the seller and see what else the seller has sold and see how people have reacted to things that they sold before. Likewise, you can't really track a buyer down. All you will get is a message, an email coming in saying, hey, I'm interested in your item, or is it still available, which is 9 times out of 10, that's the email that you get, is it still available? Sometimes those are clearly coming from overseas and they have no intention whatsoever of actually buying your item. And you kind of get better at filtering those out because you can spot some common things in the way it's written. But your risk is always that you're going to have effectively a stranger come to your home to buy something. And there are stories of people who've come to harm with someone coming to their house from Craigslist. And the way we made sure that we were protected, at least a little bit more, was this. The email transaction would go back and forth. Okay, so we get an email saying, hey, interested in your item, is it still available? We'd say yes. And then they might ask something like, is this included? Or what's the size of it? Or what's the weight of it? Or can you do anything on the price? And at that point, I might have done something on the price, but usually I didn't. Because usually I would price things to sell, but I would price things fairly to sell on Craigslist. So usually I would say, no, sorry, the price is firm. Now at that point, if they say, right, I want to come and see it, are you available this evening or tomorrow morning or something like that? At that point, once you set the time for them to come and see you and see the item and hopefully buy it, at that point, I've always said, give me your cell number and I will text you the address. So the reason I've done that is every communication on their email through Craigslist has been going through an anonymous server by asking, give me your cell number and I will text you the address. Means then that there are 2 forms of communication. There's the email stuff that's gone through Craigslist, and then there is a cell phone number, 2 cell phone number from mine to theirs, where we finally send the address. And we usually only sent the address about an hour or 2 before the scheduled time that we were going to meet. And then we say something like, there's a black F-150 in the driveway, you can't miss it, something like that, something to make it easier for them to turn up. Most people are good people, but this was just our way of making sure that there was some way of making sure that this was not just some random email from some other country, from someone looking to scam us with a Western Union transaction or something like that. And it always worked for us. So that's the first point of caution I would have with Craigslist. Anyway, people will come to the home and they will look at the item. They will almost always say, okay, I'll give you this for it, which is like 25% less than the price that you had listed it for, even though you'd already told them that was a firm price. I always said, I'm sorry, that's the price. And 8 times out of 10, they said, okay, and then they've paid up. On a couple of occasions, 2 out of 10, something like that, they've said, well, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm sorry, it's not worth that. Thank you, goodbye, and off they go. And sometimes they come back, usually they don't. But on Craigslist, you normally get a lot of inquiries for things that you're selling on Craigslist, particularly if you've priced it well, photographed it well, and put a good description in there as well. If you do all that, someone else is going to buy it. So it will always sell. Anything that goes on Craigslist, if you do those things right, it will sell. So ultimately everything sells. So the other thing we had to be careful of with Craigslist is we were always very, very clear about what we would accept in terms of payment methods. And we would accept cash, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. And that was it, nothing else. No Western Union transfers, no other transfer systems. And I know there's a lot of them out there now. We didn't accept Apple Pay at the time we were doing this. We could probably accept Apple Pay today, but at the time we didn't. And absolutely no checks, none, whatever. Okay. And that usually worked out pretty well for us. So if someone's got a Zelle account or they've got a Venmo account and they're standing in front of you and they're doing the transfer from one phone to another, I think that's pretty legitimate. The other thing that did happen though on a few occasions, and I would caution you with this, every time someone gave me a handful of notes of bills, I would always just say, you don't mind if I count it, do you? And they'll say, yeah, no problem at all, no problem. And if I counted it, there were a couple of occasions where it was short, like $40 short, something like that. And I'd say, well, this isn't enough. And because I've counted it in front of them, they can't really challenge it. And on both occasions that this happened, the guy said, oh yeah, oh sorry about that, my mistake. Reached into his pocket and pulls out the exact amount that it's short. So I think the assumption is that someone's going to take the cash, take it on trust, and then just afterwards they find out they've been shortchanged, but then it's too late. About halfway through this process of decluttering, we moved off Craigslist and moved to Facebook Marketplace. And the only reason we made the switch is we didn't really know much about Facebook Marketplace. I knew it existed, but didn't know much about it. And I wish I'd done the research in the first place, because all of our concerns with Craigslist that we had, none of them were really present with Facebook Marketplace. The principle is the same. Okay, it's a free, zero transaction way of buying something or selling something between two individuals. With Craigslist, though, it's all anonymous. You don't know who they are. With Facebook, you got a profile. And if you're a seller, you actually have a seller rating as well. You have reviews where people say whether you were honest or not, whether you were fair or not, and things like that. Okay, so it was a lot less anonymous, because then when someone would come on saying, is this available? And it looked like it was a genuine thing, I could actually look then and check out their Facebook profile. So we stopped using Craigslist, and I haven't used it since I moved over to Facebook Marketplace. The other benefit of Facebook Marketplace, and the principle is the same, you photograph it, lots of good photographs, clear description, you list it on Facebook Marketplace, and usually that is listed locally or nationally if you want it to be listed nationally, and then your item will get listed with those communities. And that way, you're maximizing your reach to people who are interested in potentially buying something, but more than likely they're going to be local as well, which means they're actually going to come and pick it up. So I really liked Facebook Marketplace. And once we moved over from Craigslist, it was no longer anonymous. Facebook Marketplace was the way to go. And then we just ripped through everything. So everything that was left in that garage went through Facebook Marketplace. So in the space of about 2 months from starting to fill that garage, we had cleared it completely. And the amount of money we made was a pleasant surprise to us, because we kept it all together. If it was cash, it all went into a pot. If it was Venmo or PayPal, then we kept it all to one side as well, so it didn't get absorbed into the weekly budget, which meant at the end of it, we had a sizable chunk of money that went a long way towards paying for a lot of the removal costs to relocate us from one state to another when we did this. So there's no downside to this at all. And I appreciate this is a very long story, but there was no downside to doing this. So our reason for decluttering was the fact that we had to relocate on our own dime. And when you do that, the incentive to declutter is there. And if it isn't there, it frankly should be there. But I think if we did another career relocation when we got relocated by a company, well, firstly, we're in a much leaner state than we were before we did all this anyway, so that would be better. But, we're still creatures of habit, so we're probably still accumulating stuff and storing stuff. I think I would still do the same thing now, even if someone else is paying for that relocation, because it was so refreshing to be able to get rid of things that we just didn't need anymore, get rid of clutter, that I would never go back to decades of clutter around my house again, if at all possible. So there you go. We had to relocate on our own cost, and we chose to relocate on our own cost. And this is how we decluttered, and this is how we saved money by not having to ship as much stuff and also then helped pay for the whole relocation by selling a lot of stuff as well. So eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and donation centers, those are your friends. Put everything in one location, and that way you are guaranteed to make sure it gets out of your house and doesn't get stuck in your house and fill in your closets and all those comfy little corners. I do hope this is useful. Please let me know in the comments below if you've got any ideas or suggestions about how we could do this better, or if you've got a different experience or the same experience, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear it. And if you like this, please do like and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely. Thank you, and see you in the next video.